Hey, this is Keith. Wanted to come to you and share some insights and developments from the annual meeting and just give you an overview of some things that happened. One of them is the adoption of Resolution 1. Something that the SBC does every year is they make expressions of theological positions that aren't quite policy statements and they're not binding theologically, but there are matters of importance in the culture that they'll speak to. And so, like I said, resolutions are non binding. They're also useful in different ways for different things, expressing the convention's opinion. Typically, they come in a very highly structured format. There are several whereas statements, like this is the condition that we find the world in, or this is something that Southern Baptists believe. And then there's a transition to resolved statements where this is our determination. And so this year we adopted several resolutions, one on the war in Ukraine, one on the prosperity gospel. I thought that was pretty interesting. One on consistent laws for pastoral sex abuse. That was Resolution 5. We'll talk about that in the future. I'm still doing some research to think through the implications of that locally. And then number 7 is on anticipation of a historic moment in the pro-life movement on the eve of the Dobbs decision. But there's one that I thought was particularly interesting for the Eastern Baptist Association, and that's resolution number 1, which is entitled On the Mission Field in Rural America, written by a pastor by the name of Luke Holmes. And this was a statement that we adopted at the annual meeting. I'm going to read it, and I want to point out that what's being expressed here, and I'll put a link in the in the video description when I post it. What's being expressed here is that there's a commitment by Southern Baptists. There's a desire to raise awareness that there are vast areas in the United States that are mission fields that have not been paid significant enough attention, and that need our attention and need a commitment that we would reach them. Now I'm going to pause after the fourth whereas, because I want to make a point with some data. So let me read this. This is the resolution on the mission field in rural America. Whereas Scripture declares that Christ commands His church to make disciples of all nations, and that we are called to be witnesses to the ends of the earth. And whereas Southern Baptists have endeavored since 1845 to spread the gospel across North America and around the globe. And whereas Jesus regularly identified Himself with rural and small places like Nazareth. And whereas over 75% of all towns and cities in the United States are small, non-urban communities of no more than 25,000 people. Okay, I'm going to pause there because when we think about the Eastern Shore and the Eastern Baptist Association, under 25,000, I actually I just did a quick look at Maryland cities by population. This is a list of Maryland municipalities, and I just did under 15,000. With regard to the Eastern Shore, Cambridge, 12,300 people. Mardellis Springs, 487 people. Cordova, 551. Hebron, 1,019. Trapp, 1,513. Pittsville, 1,792. Hurlock, 2,390. Delmar, 3,321. Pocomoke, 4,702. Fruitland, 5,281. Girdletree, 115. And Crisfield, 2,572. These are population figures that speak to the fact that we live in a region. There's very little, in terms of mass industrial things going on. We don't have massive highways or shipping lanes. We've got our chicken industry. We've got our ag industries. We do have industries here, but we are in some sense out in the sticks. I didn't even list. I didn't mention Ocean City, which I think some people think, oh, it's a city and it's huge and there's infrastructure. Well, a lot of that infrastructure exists. Why? For the summer tourism, right? But according to this, in the 2020 community survey that this list is made up of, Ocean City's population is 6,957. So it's relatively low. So what this is saying is 75% of all towns and cities in the United States are small, non-urban communities of no more than 25,000 people. And whereas approximately 19% or 60 million people of the population in the United States resides in rural areas. Okay, so in a nation of 350 million, 60 million of those are living in rural areas. Whereas rural church pastors often suffer from isolation and loneliness, lacking ministry partnerships and resources, and whereas each person in a rural community is made in the image of God and needs to hear the gospel, now, therefore, be it resolved that the messengers to the Southern Baptist Convention meeting in Anaheim, California, June 14th to the 15th, 2022, express our commitment to and recognition of the mission field in rural places. And be it further resolved that we pledge to continue to support the work of the cooperative program to help spread the gospel in rural places. And be it further resolved that we encourage our churches to look for opportunities to establish, help, and revitalize churches in rural communities. And be it further resolved that we state our support for the work of rural churches to spread the gospel. Sorry, there's an erroneous word in there. We state our support for the work rural churches do to spread the gospel. There is no erroneous word. I read it wrong. And be it further resolved that we pledge to remember that all of mankind is made in the image of God and deserving of our love and gospel outreach, regardless of the size of their community. And be it further resolved that we encourage and celebrate the work of the North American Mission Board, state conventions, local associations, rural churches, and their ministry leaders in their ongoing efforts to spread the gospel, plant new churches, and revitalize established ones in rural places. And be it finally resolved that we urge all Southern Baptists to dedicate our time, money, and lives to the furtherance of the good news of Jesus Christ across every area of the world, home and abroad, in city centers, suburbs, small towns, and rural places. I think it's very well written, well intended, and the hopes are that we can use that commitment and use this statement to influence our entities, influence our state conventions, even influence our local association, which we are part of, to give special attention to a unique mission field, which is rural America. We tend to focus on cities and on higher population areas, but rural churches are the source of a good number, I believe, within the Southern Baptist Convention of missionaries, of vocational preachers, of people who are called to preach. They're particularly um, that they probably see the greatest overlap of bivocational ministry and ministry to churches, and so there's a need to refine and think differently about how ministry works in rural areas and to develop resources and to commit resources to those churches. I wanted to share that with you. I'm going to include a link in with the video that is a link to a new podcast that's coming out with John Mark Clifton, who works for the North American Mission Board. It's called the Rural Pastor Podcast. I think I had looked at it. I haven't listened to it, but it's specifically designed. John Mark Clifton and the co-host are going to be talking about the needs of rural communities and what it looks like. And I am going to invite you. My hope is that you'll talk to me. I think that the hope of the local association, the state convention, is to do what we can to partner with local churches and to develop pathways for local churches to participate in in the work of the association, but also for the Southern Baptist Convention, the national organization, our state convention, the Baptist Convention of Maryland and Delaware, and then our local association to say, how can we resource, help, and serve smaller churches in rural areas that have unique and different struggles? And so, if you'd like to have a conversation about that, I invite you to message me. I'm going to continue to make some of these videos and share some of these things, but I really wanted to share this with you and let you know about it. So, hope you have a great day. God bless you. As always, if you'd like to grab a meal or talk some more, please shoot me a message. Thanks so much. Bye bye.